I became frightened, I became insecure, I became worried, I even became ill because I couldn't cope with all these things that were going on around me.
Ruth Dickson had it all. Her father was a high-ranking government official in Nigeria who made sure his family lacked nothing.
We moved to the United Kingdom. At about the time I was about 9.5, 10, he was given a political post as a presidential liaison officer. So it was at that point that he thought it would be better if we all moved to Nigeria.
That's when things began to unravel.
My mom didn't come with us straight away. There wasn't really anyone to take care of me. I was put into the boarding house, and during the holidays, I'll be left at home with the helpers.
Throughout her teenage years and entering university, Ruth made her own choices, which were not always good.
I had everything I needed. I had the money I needed, went out to parties, had friends, that were not a very positive influence in my life.
Ruthie was rich, beautiful, and very popular, the life wire of campus parties. However, there was another set of people desperately trying to get her attention.
One thing that was quite recurrent in my journey was at specific points, people would come to me and share the gospel, and I would always listen.
But Ruth would not pay attention to the messages she heard.
I just felt it wasn't for me. I didn't think that God was calling me.
After graduation, Ruthie returned to the UK and continued to live what appeared to be a perfect life.
I had everything at this point that I had wanted, a house, a car, everything was going well in a very beautiful neighborhood. I could shop where I wanted, I could buy everything.
Over time, Ruthie's lifestyle became too expensive to maintain. She extended her credits and eventually the debt collectors came knocking, taking everything of value.
I became frightened, I became insecure, I became worried, I even became ill because I couldn't cope with all these things that were going on around me.
Ruthie lost her home and depression took over her life.
On one particular day, I was so stressed out, I almost lost my mind. And it was at that point I said, am I living for material things?
Ruthie moved in with an aunt who was a Christian. She started attending church and reading Christian literature.
It was talking about the redemptive power of the blood and how the blood has redeemed us from the curse of the law. And it was this write-up and I read it and I just had this deep understanding of the work of Christ, what he did for us, what it meant for us, the fact that I was a sinner. The revelation came to me that it's through Christ that I'm saved. He's the one that cleanses me. He makes me whole.
Ruthie knelt down in her room and cried out to Jesus.
And I was crying, I was weeping because it just dawned on me the full impact of what Christ had done and the situation without him, the life I was living without him. That was the point at which I gave my life to the Lord.
The pressure on Ruth did not lift immediately, but she had found a place of comfort and strength in her relationship with God.
I felt brand new when that revelation came upon me, the reconciliation, the fact that I could talk to the Father freely. I could be myself with him and that I was his own, that finally I had some form of security in my life, a real father. It changed my perspective about myself. It made me feel secure for the first time.
While studying the scriptures, Ruthie says God opened her eyes to see his purpose for her through the life of Ruth in the Bible. She became a committed worker in church and later a missionary. She has also written many books, one of which is titled Ruth.
A lot of the pressure around me was caused by the material things I was trying to keep up. And I found out how Ruth had to leave behind her past life in order to enter the promises of God. So that book was a transforming key to my life. It changed my life completely, it changed my perspective.
Ruth now sees God always had everything she ever needed, even more than all the material things that she idolized.
I found myself at the point in my life where I owned my own property. I had a 4-bedroom house in England, completely detached, and I had to leave that house and go into the social housing system. That was the lowest point in my life. I felt my world had ended. But looking back now, I just see how silly I was. Because I placed so much emphasis on the material things that I couldn't see that God was using that pathway to get me into my purpose, my destiny. Sometimes I've discovered that the Lord will shake things around you, strip things away, because He loves us, because He knows that as long as we hold on to those things, we're never going to fulfill our purpose.